welcome to The Take. I'm Elizabeth Wagmeister.
And I'm Clayton Davis, and we're here to give you our take on some of the week's biggest stories. Elizabeth, we had some Matt Damon controversy, we have Jeopardy news, and then we have some big movies opening this weekend.
We do, so let's start with that, Clayton. Suicide Squad is hitting theaters today, and it's on track to make $30 million at the box office, which by pandemic standards is a very impressive figure. But as COVID cases continue to rise with the Delta variant, it remains to be seen if people are going to run to theaters. And there was actually some big news regarding COVID in Hollywood this week. Some major companies, including Netflix, have announced that they are requiring all of their employees to be vaccinated. So, Clayton, you were at the premiere of Suicide Squad. It looked like a pre-COVID event, but I know that it was safe because obviously there's a lot of safety protocols at any events these days. But do you think that COVID is going to scare people away from theaters, or do you think that they'll turn out this weekend?
No, I think people will go, and I think what we saw with films like A Quiet Place Part 2 did very well at the box office. People want to go back to the theaters, especially big event films like Suicide Squad. Plus, it's really good. Outdoes the first one in a big way. It's funny, it's rated R and very graphic, but it's so much fun. But I think this brings about an interesting question. Our own Mark Malkin was on the red carpet, spoke with stars like Margot Robbie. Does this have Warner Brothers start thinking about restoring the Snyderverse? Because right now, all their films are one-offs. You know, the DCEU is not really intact. Do they adopt the Marvel model and start actually building this world back up? Or are we just gonna keep doing this until maybe the Batman makes sense in retrospect with Joker? We don't know.
Well, we have to wait and see, but I think that your biggest take here is that it's really good, because obviously the first one, not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know who it's not a good week for? Matt Damon. The actor faced backlash following an interview with the UK Sunday Times after he revealed that he stopped using the homophobic F slur when his daughter wrote him a treatise asking him not to use it anymore. As we live in this time of cancel culture, Elizabeth, and it's very, very controversial, whether or not it's even real or not, I am encouraged that Matt Damon's having this conversation, but some of his responses to it may not have hit the right tones, and it's a good conversation for us to have in terms of having that dialogue and being able to learn about, you know, why things shouldn't be said.
I agree. I also think, did we really have to learn this? You should know that you don't use that slur, but I agree that I am not for cancel culture. I think that there needs to be room for dialogue, and I did appreciate that Matt Damon issued an apology so swiftly. But you know whose apology didn't go over so well was the rapper DaBaby. He is also under fire. He was on stage performing, and he made very derogatory comments about the LGBTQ community and about HIV and AIDS. He made a lot of false statements. Swift backlash. Dua Lipa, who collaborated with him, she spoke out. Also Elton John. Miley Cyrus actually said, "I would like to have a conversation with you." And there were also 11 organizations that wrote an open letter to the rapper. Here's part of their statement, Clayton. They said, "At a time when HIV continues to disproportionately impact Black Americans and queer and transgender people of color, a dialogue is critical. We must address the miseducation about HIV." Now, I am so glad that they wrote this open letter, because clearly he is so misinformed. He's been dropped from many festivals, from a brand deal. My take is that he really is only apologizing because he's losing business.
Yes, I also don't like this new thing that's coming about in Hollywood, the new defense system. I didn't know. We're 40 years old. I think you should know this by now.
I don't care how old you are. It's ridiculous. Your take is spot on, Clayton. But let's talk about some good news, because the Bachelor franchise is making more diversity efforts. They have finally hired their first ever Black executive producer. Now, the show has been on since 2002, so a lot of people are saying, too little, too late. But I've got to tell you, you know, I love the show. I watch it, I cover it. I broke this scoop exclusively for us that Jodie Baskerville has been elevated to executive producer. She's been with the franchise for nearly 10 years. And I've spoken with people with the franchise. They are so happy that she's been promoted, but they also really feel like the show actually does want to make real change. Of course, just having a Black bachelor or bachelorette is not going to fix all the problems. You really need change behind the scenes. So this is a good first major step.
Yeah, and it's good to see any organization make those steps, which actually brings us to Grammy Awards. They announced that the 2022 award ceremony will now include an inclusion rider to ensure diversity and equity on all fronts and all levels of the show. that is huge. It's monumental. Everyone's making the correct moves to ensure that we have that diversity that we're going for and doing it in a thoughtful way and manner.
It's such good news. Obviously, we are all for that. But let's wrap up the week with a big story. In fact, the biggest story about a person that you've actually never heard of. So our own Cynthia Littleton, one of our favorite colleagues, of course, she broke a huge scoop this week that the front runner to replace the late Alex Trebek on Jeopardy is Mike Richards. My question for you, Clayton, who the heck is Mike Richards?
Move over Tom Hanks, move over Denzel, Mike Richards is in town. Listen, this is an interesting development. It's underwhelming to social media people and everyone that's been following who's gonna take up the Alex Trebek mantle. We wanted LeVar Burton. I love reading Rainbow, and it's not him, but this actually brings some purity back to the game, possibly, because Jeopardy James, when he was breaking all those records, a lot of people thought it really messed up what makes Jeopardy so great. And as we see this now, and just to come full circle now, you mentioned The Bachelor earlier. Mike Richards was the executive producer on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which Chris hosted over. Chris Harrison had hosted. And I'm sure right there somewhere you can hear him crying because he totally could have retired right into this gig at some point. And now
it didn't work out too well for Chris Harrison. But look, Mike Richards, he is the executive producer, and he also has some serious game show chops. He has executive produced a lot of other shows, so he knows what he's talking about. All I just say is congratulations, Mike, because you just got job security for the next 240 years, truly.
Yeah.
This show's gonna be on forever.
Yeah, and just to let everyone know, I know we were gonna get that gig, but we are hosting The Take, so that is why we didn't
decided
get it.
to pass up on the offer because we're here. And we will be here next week. As always, tune in next Friday for a new episode of The Take.
Thanks for watching.